Imagine waking up to a headline so unbelievable that your first instinct is to assume it has to be some kind of elaborate prank. A headline that doesn't just trend for a few hours but threatens to flip the entire foundation of women's basketball upside down before most people even finish their morning coffee. For years, the sport has been fighting for visibility, clawing for respect, and pushing for fair compensation. But nothing could have prepared anyone for the rumor that exploded across social media like a digital earthquake. It wasn't about a new shoe deal, it wasn't about a record endorsement package, and it definitely wasn't about a routine contract extension buried in the sports news cycle. This rumor was different. It was monstrous in scale, absurd in theory, and yet somehow, completely believable. Because when whispers began circulating that an overseas superpower, one known for rewriting the rules of global sports, was preparing to drop an unprecedented $1 billion into women's basketball, it didn't sound like fiction. It sounded like the logical next chapter in a world where money no longer just influences the sports landscape, it bulldozes it. And right at the center of this firestorm were two names that have dominated headlines, conversations, and highlight reels all year: Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. These two weren't just trending athletes. They were cultural forces. Clark, the generational phenom whose logo-range shooting turned casual fans into die-hard followers. Cunningham, the adrenaline-charged spark plug whose aggressiveness, confidence, and on-court chaos made every possession feel like the start of a viral moment. Together, they represented two powerful sides of women's basketball: the elegance and the fire, the precision and the chaos. So when rumors suggested that both had somehow become the leading targets of an eye-watering billion-dollar proposal, the shock wasn't just about the money. It was about what the offer symbolized. Because $1 billion isn't an offer. It's a takeover. Sports insiders scrambled for details. Analysts questioned the validity but kept their voices low because, deep down, they knew this wasn't the type of story you dismiss lightly. Not when similar plays had already shattered long-standing traditions in golf, soccer, combat sports, and even esports. Wherever financial limits existed, this group had a way of simply erasing them. And for the first time, it looked like women's basketball had been added to that list. The number was so large, so aggressively bold, that it forced the world to confront an uncomfortable truth. If even a fraction of it were real, the entire WNBA system was in immediate danger. And then came the moment that made everyone stop pretending this was just gossip. A few subtle comments from the Indiana Fever's own front office. Comments that didn't mention Saudi Arabia directly, didn't confirm any secret negotiations, but absolutely hinted that something massive was happening behind closed doors. The tone of the GM's responses felt different. Less confident. Less secure. More like someone trying to keep a ship from taking on water while cameras watched their every move. For a league that had just begun capitalizing on record-breaking viewership, expanding franchises, and finally receiving mainstream attention, the timing couldn't have been worse. It was as if the spotlight that was supposed to illuminate their growth suddenly exposed their most vulnerable weakness. And that weakness wasn't talent. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't fan support. It was money. Because no matter how loyal players might want to be, no matter how proud they are of the league they helped build, no one can ignore a billion-dollar reality check. Not when the current system pays rookies less than some corporate interns. Not when the brightest stars are being treated like global icons everywhere except on their official paychecks. Not when the outside world is offering not just wealth, but luxury, comfort, safety, and global superstardom on a level the players have always deserved but never received. And behind all the noise, all the speculation, and all the internal panic, one thing became painfully clear. If this offer is real, it doesn't just change the league. It rewrites the entire future of women's basketball. The first wave of disbelief came from fans. The second came from the media. But the third, and the one that truly mattered, came from inside the league itself. Because when insiders began quietly confirming that something huge was happening behind the scenes, the rumors suddenly transformed into a genuine threat. The idea of $1 billion proposal sounded outrageous at first glance, but the longer people looked at it, the more it resembled a calculated move rather than a wild fantasy. And that's what terrified everyone. The story didn't begin with a polished announcement or a splashy press release. It started with fragments, small pieces of information leaking out through reporters, anonymous sources, and executives speaking a little too freely during interviews. The tone of their statements revealed everything their words didn't. Instead of the usual confidence about roster stability or future planning, there was hesitation. There was tension. There was a sense of someone choosing every syllable with surgical precision because they knew one wrong phrase could expose the entire situation. When the Indiana Fever GM was asked about long-term roster security, the answer wasn't the typical, "We're building a dynasty," or "We're confident players want to stay." Instead, the response sounded defensive, almost worried. The GM acknowledged that offers from non-traditional markets were becoming a growing concern, emphasizing that the team was aware of the pressure coming from outside the WNBA. It was the type of comment that shouldn't have meant much, until everyone connected the dots. What non-traditional market has the power to make the WNBA nervous? What region is known for throwing unimaginable sums of money at top athletes? What league has already shaken the foundations of golf, soccer, and combat sports? There was only one answer. The rumor should have sounded impossible. The WNBA had never dealt with this level of financial warfare. The idea of a new overseas league being built from the ground up for the sole purpose of acquiring America's biggest basketball names seemed too extreme to believe. But the more people analyzed the pattern, the more everything pointed to a coordinated plan. A plan designed to hit the league exactly where it was weakest. The WNBA had just begun celebrating an explosion of interest. Ticket sales were skyrocketing. Merch was selling out. Television ratings were smashing records. The Fever alone became one of the most watched teams in sports, largely due to Caitlin Clark's arrival. But success comes with glare, and glare exposes cracks. The world quickly noticed something that players had known for years. The financial structure simply wasn't built to reward the women who carried the league on their shoulders. And that's where the rumor gained momentum. Because what better target for a hostile takeover than a league bursting with talent and popularity, but trapped inside a limited financial system? The offer didn't need to be confirmed publicly to cause panic. All it took was the possibility. Executives began whispering about it during meetings. Analysts started referencing it cautiously during broadcasts. Even veteran players were asked directly if they'd consider a life-changing overseas deal. And while most gave politically safe answers, their expressions said enough. Loyalty becomes complicated when $1 billion enters the room. This wasn't just a rumor anymore. It was leverage. It was a signal. It was a warning shot from a financial giant who had already proven it could buy out entire sports ecosystems. And for the first time, the WNBA found itself staring at a threat that no amount of team culture, league branding, or inspiring speeches could deflect. Because when an offer is big enough to rewrite generational futures, when it challenges the strongest values athletes hold, when it promises not just money but power, comfort, fame, and global reach, suddenly, the impossible becomes realistic. And the unthinkable becomes a conversation. That's why this rumor refused to die. Every interview, every leaked detail, and every insider whisper only added fuel to the fire. The WNBA could downplay it publicly. Fans could try to deny it online. But behind closed doors, everyone knew the truth. $1 billion shadow had appeared over the league, and it wasn't going away. If there's one number that explains why this entire situation spiraled into a legitimate crisis, it's not the $1 billion rumor itself. It's $76,000, the base salary the WNBA pays to the most electrifying rookie the league has seen in decades. Caitlin Clark, the athlete responsible for record-breaking viewership, sold-out arenas, viral highlights, and a level of public attention the league has begged for since its inception, was being compensated less than the starting salary of a mid-level office employee. And for the first time, mainstream audiences noticed. The contrast was so extreme, so blatantly lopsided, that it practically invited outside forces to make a move. Clark had already secured millions through endorsements, but the problem wasn't her off-court earnings. It was the salary structure that dramatically undervalued what she generated for the league itself. Every sold-out game, every spike in TV ratings, every merchandise surge was tied directly to her name. Fans weren't lining up at 6 a.m. to buy season tickets because of a team logo. They were doing it because she was playing. And yet, the official paycheck didn't reflect a fraction of that impact. This financial disconnect created the perfect opening for disruption. When a player is delivering superstar numbers but receiving a starter-level wage, the message is loud and painful. We know what you're worth, but we can't pay it. The WNBA's business model simply wasn't built for this kind of superstar economy. It wasn't designed for global icons. It wasn't even designed for rapid growth. It was created during a time when interest was modest, funding was limited, and earning potential was capped by structural limitations the league has struggled to escape. But the world had changed, and the league hadn't caught up. That gap is exactly what foreign investors saw. They understood that the WNBA was holding a treasure chest without a key. They knew the league couldn't offer generational wealth, couldn't erase salary caps, and couldn't restructure contracts just to keep one or two players. They also knew players were becoming increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of economic progress. For all the positivity surrounding the growth of women's basketball, players still flew commercial, stayed in budget hotels, and dealt with travel conditions that felt more like college road trips than professional standards. This exposed a weakness far more damaging than any competitive imbalance. It exposed a psychological weakness. Because when athletes feel undervalued, underpaid, and overworked, their loyalty becomes vulnerable. Not because they don't love the game, not because they don't appreciate the league, but because they're human. And for Clark and Cunningham, two players entering their prime with massive fan bases and the pressure of global attention, the idea of being tethered to a financially restrictive league for years was becoming harder to justify. Then came the rumors of the Saudi proposal. This wasn't just a salary increase. This was a league-offered golden empire. Contract numbers so vast they dwarfed anything ever seen in women's basketball. Signing bonuses that could set families up for generations. Private jets. 7-star accommodations. Tax-free income. An entire infrastructure designed to treat players not just as athletes but as elite global assets. It wasn't an offer. It was an escape route from a system that had held them back financially through no fault of their own. The WNBA's restrictive structure, meant to maintain financial stability, had now become the very thing that endangered its future. Because while the league had rules, salary caps, and limitations, the rumored new league had none. No restrictions. No ceilings. No hesitation. Only money, vision, and a deep understanding of how to attract global attention through the biggest names in sports. And that's when the panic truly began. Executives realized they couldn't match even 1% of the rumored deal. Agents knew they'd be negligent not to at least explore the possibility. Players saw a path to financial freedom that the current system couldn't dream of offering. The disparity didn't just open the door, it kicked it off its hinges. This wasn't about greed. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about reality. A reality where the best athletes in the world were being compensated like interns while a financial titan watched from the sidelines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the moment had finally arrived. If this rumored league really intends to shake the foundation of women's basketball, it couldn't just throw money at random players. It needed stars, faces recognizable enough to command attention, personalities strong enough to dominate headlines, and skill sets appealing enough to turn casual observers into obsessed fans. And that's exactly why Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham became the centerpieces of this billion-dollar storm. Caitlin Clark isn't simply a great player. She's a phenomenon. Her shooting range alone has become a cultural event, the kind of spectacle that makes people stop scrolling, stop talking, stop moving just to see what she'll do next. Every logo 3, every flashy assist, every electrifying possession turns into instant viral content. Her name doesn't just trend, it explodes across platforms with the velocity of a superstar who commands both admiration and discussion. She carries the same gravitational pull that only a handful of athletes ever achieve. In the modern sports landscape, that kind of influence is more valuable than any statistic. And that's the exact type of asset Saudi investors have been targeting across global sports. Not players, icons. Clark's presence alone can shift the economic landscape of an entire league. She attracts sponsorships, boosts ticket sales, elevates television ratings, and draws in demographics that traditional women's basketball marketing struggle to reach. A superstar who brings unprecedented visibility and the kind of clean, wholesome public image that aligns perfectly with branding ambitions. If the goal is to gain legitimacy, influence, and international attention, there is no better face to attach to a new league than hers. But visibility alone isn't enough to build an entertainment product powerful enough to compete with the WNBA. That's where Sophie Cunningham fits the puzzle. Cunningham is the exact opposite energy, and that contrast is intentional. She's fiery, confrontational, aggressive, and unapologetically emotional on the court. Her intensity creates moments that go viral not because of highlight plays but because of reaction, chaos, and conflict. When she steps onto the floor, something dramatic always happens. She chirps, she battles, she refuses to back down, and the camera never seems to look away. While Clark brings the pure basketball artistry, Cunningham brings the spark that turns a game into a spectacle. Together, the combination is explosive. This rumored league doesn't just want talent, it wants television. It wants debates. It wants clips that circulate the internet within seconds. It wants moments so dramatic that fans, regardless of country or time zone, can't help but tune in. A balanced cast of personalities is essential for building a global product, and Clark's elegance paired with Cunningham's chaos is a marketing blueprint too perfect to ignore. The WNBA has leaned heavily on Clark to carry its modern revival, but a new league could leverage both Clark and Cunningham to build a brand from scratch, one designed explicitly for the digital era. Instead of traditional marketing reliant on scheduled promotions and slowly developing narratives, this new league could generate content non-stop. Every practice could be filmed. Every interaction could be clipped. Every emotion could be amplified. The infrastructure behind it wouldn't just be sports, it would be entertainment. The rumored investors understand modern media in a way the WNBA has struggled to adopt. They know fans don't just follow teams anymore. They follow personalities. They follow drama. They follow storylines that feel larger than life. And no duo in women's basketball creates more natural storytelling potential right now than Clark and Cunningham. Even their play styles complement each other in a marketable way. Clark's precision and creativity paired with Cunningham's edge and physicality create a viewing experience that appeals to different segments of the audience. Young fans who love skill gravitate toward Clark. Fans who love energy, attitude, and intensity gravitate toward Cunningham. Put them together and you cover the full spectrum. This rumored league isn't trying to compete, it's trying to dominate. And to dominate, it needs figures who transcend the sport itself. Clark, with her superstar glow, and Cunningham, with her fearless persona, are the ideal pillars to build upon. They are not just athletes, they are characters in a story the entire world is now watching. And the investors know exactly how to use them. While fans were celebrating the rise of women's basketball, while social media buzzed with highlights and record-breaking viewership numbers, a completely different story was unfolding behind the scenes. One that executives desperately hoped no one would notice. Because beneath the excitement, the WNBA was quietly entering one of the most fragile moments in its history, and the rumored billion-dollar offer didn't create the crisis. It merely exposed it. For years, league officials publicly emphasized growth, progress, and momentum. Expansion was being discussed. Merchandise was finally flying off shelves. Teams like the Fever were experiencing levels of attention that seemed impossible just 5 seasons ago. But inside front offices, there was a growing sense of fear. Fear that this rapid surge of interest arrived faster than the league's business model could support. The WNBA wasn't prepared for superstardom on this scale. It wasn't designed to hold its top talent financially. It wasn't built to withstand external forces with unlimited wealth. And the players felt those limitations every single day. The biggest stars in the league were still flying commercial. They were still sitting in cramped airport terminals, waiting for delayed flights, sometimes arriving hours before a game with little time to rest. Videos of players dragging their luggage through crowded terminals became an unintentional symbol of how far behind the infrastructure lagged. For athletes competing at the highest level, this wasn't just uncomfortable, it was demoralizing. Meanwhile, the rumored new league painted a completely different picture. Charter jets, 7-star hotels, private security, personal chefs, a lifestyle that matched the status of global superstars. The contrast was so extreme that many players joked privately that their travel conditions looked more like a college program than a professional league. And when those jokes began circulating through locker rooms, agents and group chats, the whispers grew louder. If someone offered real money, would you take it? For the first time, That what if wasn't hypothetical. This tension hit the fever hardest. As Caitlin Clark transformed the franchise into one of the most talked about teams in sports, executives suddenly realized how vulnerable they were. All the season ticket sales, all the new sponsorships, all the national attention, it wasn't tied to the logo. It was tied to her. Lose her, and everything the franchise gained vanishes overnight. That's why the GM's tone shifted from confident to cautious. That's why every question about roster security came with a pause, a tight smile, or a carefully calculated answer. And the pressure wasn't coming from just one direction. The newly launched Unrivaled League, spearheaded by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, had entered the equation as well. Their goal was simple: give WNBA players a domestic off-season option that paid higher salaries and built a sustainable career path in the U.S. But even their most ambitious offers, equity shares, revenue incentives, and generous payouts, looked microscopic next to the rumored billion-dollar deal. Unrivaled hoped to be the solution. Instead, the Saudi whisper became a threat that overshadowed their entire vision. How could a young startup league compete with a financial entity that could pay more for one season than they could pay for a decade? They couldn't. And they knew it. This created a power vacuum no one was prepared for. Players were suddenly standing at the crossroads of opportunity and uncertainty. On one side, a league they love but one that has struggled to support them financially. On the other, a rumored offer that could instantly change their lives and rewrite the global hierarchy of women's basketball. The WNBA wasn't just facing competition. It was facing the possibility of becoming irrelevant as soon as its biggest stars packed their bags. All of this pressure collided with the worst possible timing: the expansion draft. The Golden State Valkyries were preparing to enter the league, and teams were already scrambling to decide which players to protect. But how do you plan for the future if your franchise cornerstone might leave the entire system? How do you build stability when every roster decision could be wiped away by one unfathomably large offer? Executives felt it. Coaches felt it. Agents felt it. And the players, whose careers depended on the decisions being made in those front offices, felt it more than anyone. The WNBA was trying to grow, but suddenly realized it might not grow fast enough to keep its biggest stars. Not when the gap between what players were worth and what they were being paid had widened into a canyon. Not when another league could erase that gap with a single signature. The crisis wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It didn't involve scandals or public implosions. It was quiet. It was subtle. It was a slow tightening of tension that everyone sensed but tried to ignore. And now, with the billion-dollar rumor spreading like wildfire, that silence was becoming impossible to maintain. Because the league that had finally stepped into the spotlight was now standing on a cliff edge. One wrong move, one confirmed offer, and everything could change forever. The deeper the rumor spread, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about basketball. It wasn't even about sports. This was about something much bigger. An international power move disguised as a jaw-dropping contract offer. And that's what makes the situation so complicated for players like Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. Because accepting an offer of this magnitude doesn't just change their lives. It places them in the center of a geopolitical tug-of-war they never asked to participate in. To understand the pressure surrounding this rumored deal, you have to look at the pattern behind similar sports takeovers in recent years. The strategy is almost identical every time. Identify an undervalued sport, invest absurd amounts of money into acquiring its biggest stars, and use those athletes to shift global perception. It started with soccer. Then it hit golf. Then combat sports. Each time, the financial offers were so immense that criticism didn't stop the movement. It only amplified the spotlight. This rumored women's basketball offer fits that pattern perfectly. Caitlin Clark's image is a marketing dream. She represents the wholesome, hard-working, small-town superstar narrative that resonates worldwide. Her story makes people feel something: pride, inspiration, hope, whatever emotion they want to project onto her. That image has power far beyond the court. And that's exactly why foreign investors would want her as the face of a newly built league. Not because she can score from the logo. Not because she sells out every arena she walks into. But because she can reshape the public image of the project instantly. Then there's the other half of the equation: Sophie Cunningham. If Clark is the light, Cunningham is the spark. She's not afraid to be intense. She's not afraid to be loud. She's not afraid to be polarizing. Her energy practically demands attention, and attention is the currency these investors want. This rumored league doesn't just want to sign talent. They want personalities who can dominate the global conversation the moment they touch the floor. But the controversy comes with the territory. Critics around the world have already raised questions about human rights issues, political history, and the concept of sports washing. The idea is simple. Use world-famous athletes to soften international criticism and rebrand national identity through entertainment. Athletes who take these massive offers are often accused of becoming symbols in a much larger political game. They're questioned about morality, loyalty, and the ethics of accepting such staggering sums of money. And if Clark or Cunningham ever chose to take this rumored deal, the backlash would be instant. Every press conference would turn into a debate. Every interview would include pointed questions. Every public appearance would come with commentary far beyond the sport they play. They would be expected to answer for controversies they had nothing to do with. They would become spokespeople not by choice, but by circumstance. It's a heavy burden, especially for players still in their 20s who just want to play basketball, make a living, and build a career. But when the alternative is turning down generational wealth, the decision becomes impossibly complicated. $1 billion is not a contract. It's a legacy-altering shift. It's money that sets up their parents, their siblings, their future families, and their future families' families. It's financial stability that goes far beyond the typical athlete payday. And when a player is offered that kind of life-changing wealth, the conversation turns from morality to survivability. The world judges professional athletes harshly. But athletes only get a narrow window to earn money before injuries, age, or new talent change everything. Careers end quickly. One bad landing, one torn ligament, one unexpected twist, and everything can disappear. And in that reality, the billion-dollar rumor becomes more than a headline. It becomes a question athletes can't ignore. If I don't take this now, will I ever see an opportunity like this again? Even NBA legends understand this. Many of the biggest names have openly criticized the pay gap in the WNBA. Many have openly supported players demanding more financial respect. And if Clark were offered a figure that dwarfs even the largest NBA contracts, it's very likely she'd receive massive public backing from male players who understand the business side of sports better than anyone. But this isn't just about support. It's about influence. Because if even one superstar takes a deal like this, it will set off a chain reaction that affects the entire sport. Fans will follow the talent. Media will follow the views. Sponsors will follow the audience. And the global perception of where the premier women's basketball league is located will shift overnight. What started as a rumor would transform into a realignment of power across international sports. The WNBA knows it. The investors know it. And the players, who are caught between loyalty, morality, and generational wealth, know it too. This is more than a contract negotiation. It's a moment that forces everyone involved to question what the future of the sport should look like and who should control that future. And the most unsettling part? The decision may already be closer than anyone realizes. If even one of these rumors becomes reality, if even one signature hits paper, the entire structure of women's basketball could shift overnight. That's not exaggeration. That's not fear-mongering. That's simple economics mixed with undeniable star power. Because if Caitlin Clark or Sophie Cunningham chooses the rumored overseas offer, it won't be just a surprising career move. It will be the first domino in a chain reaction the WNBA may never recover from. Think about what happens the moment Clark steps onto a different court in a different country. Fans don't stay behind. They follow. They've already proven it. Whether she's in college, the pros, or playing pickup on a live stream, they show up in millions. Her supporters aren't tied to a specific city or franchise. They're tied to her. They buy tickets because of her. They tune in because of her. They shift the direction of entire broadcasts because of her presence alone. If she leaves, the viewership leaves with her. And if the viewership leaves, the sponsors don't stay. The momentum stops. The cultural buzz drops. The WNBA, which finally broke through years of stagnant attention, would suddenly find itself trying to rebuild from scratch. This isn't because the league lacks talent. It has some of the greatest players in the world. But Clark's impact isn't just talent. It's visibility. It's global reach. It's the type of influence leagues normally spend decades trying to manufacture. And for the first time in history, that influence could be relocated with a stroke of a pen. And then there's Sophie Cunningham. People talk about Clark because she's the superstar, the generational phenomenon. But Cunningham brings something just as valuable in today's media landscape: unpredictability. She's the competitor who isn't afraid to talk, to battle, to stir energy into every possession. When she's on the court, everything feels bigger. WNBA clips that go viral rarely come from routine plays. They come from moments charged with emotion, intensity, personality. And Sophie has that in abundance. A new overseas league wanting both of them is no accident. It's a balanced formula. One global superstar. One magnetic firestarter. Together, they create entertainment. They create friction. They create storylines the moment the ball goes up. And storylines drive modern sports far more than box scores ever will. So what happens after they leave? The biggest fear inside the WNBA isn't just losing one or two players. It's losing the entire future pipeline. Because young players, college stars, high school phenoms, international prospects, pay close attention to where the money and prestige shift. If the new rumored league successfully pulls in the biggest names, then suddenly a brand new path exists. A path that bypasses the WNBA draft entirely. A path that offers global exposure, massive financial freedom, and no restrictive salary cap. Younger stars like Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, and Paige Buchers would instantly become targets. Not years from now. Not someday. Immediately. The moment Clark or Cunningham makes a move, every agent in women's basketball would have to reevaluate their entire career strategy. College players would start thinking differently about their futures. International prospects would think differently about where to sign. And suddenly the WNBA would be competing not for attention, but for survival. The league could find itself slipping into a role it never imagined, a developmental system for a foreign league with far deeper pockets. If the top-tier talent leaves, the WNBA becomes a stepping stone, not a destination. A place where players begin their journey, not where they build their legacy. The identity, the status, the history, it all becomes secondary to the economic reality of an offer too large to ignore. Even fans, the lifeblood of the sport, would face their own dilemma. They love the teams. They love the history. They love the community the league has built. But at the end of the day, fans follow stars. It's human nature. Look at soccer when Ronaldo moved. Look at golf when LIV formed. Look at every major sports migration in the last decade. Wherever the stars go, the audience follows. Because fans don't just want games, they want greatness. And greatness isn't tied to one specific league. This is the outcome the WNBA fears most. Not because they doubt their product, but because they understand that financial warfare doesn't allow room for gradual development or slow adaptation. Once the shift begins, it accelerates. And once it accelerates, it becomes unstoppable. If this rumored billion-dollar move becomes reality, it won't just steal players. It will steal attention. It will steal momentum. It will steal the future of the sport as the world currently knows it. And the most powerful part: it only takes one decision for everything to begin unraveling. When you look at the scale of everything happening, the whispers from front offices, the billion-dollar rumors, the international ambitions, and the silent panic behind the scenes, it becomes clear that this moment is bigger than a contract negotiation. It's bigger than the WNBA, bigger than Caitlin Clark, bigger than Sophie Cunningham. This is a crossroads that could redefine women's basketball for an entire generation. For decades, the sport has fought for recognition, for resources, for respect. It's built on the backs of athletes who gave everything despite receiving so little in return. And now, for the first time, someone outside the system isn't just offering a raise. They're offering a revolution. A complete restructuring of what women's basketball can be, how it can operate, and how its stars should be valued. For Clark, Cunningham, and every rising talent watching closely, this rumored offer represents both a dream and a dilemma. Generational wealth on one side, and the weight of global scrutiny on the other. The WNBA, meanwhile, finds itself standing on unstable ground. Not because it lacks passion or talent or loyal fans, those have always been there, but because it was never built to withstand a financial storm of this magnitude. It's a league still growing, still trying to evolve, still working to improve conditions that should have been improved years ago. Now, the clock is ticking louder than ever. Because one signature, one press conference, one unexpected announcement could set off a chain of events no commissioner, no team executive, and no sponsor can stop. And that's what makes this moment so unreal. We're not watching a rumor. We're watching a potential shift in global sports power. We're watching the possibility of a brand new era emerge in real time. One where loyalty, morality, opportunity, legacy, and financial freedom collide in ways no one expected. Caitlin Clark didn't ask to be the center of a geopolitical tug-of-war. Sophie Cunningham didn't expect to become a headline in a billion-dollar bidding story. And the WNBA never imagined it would have to fight for its life this soon. But here we are, in the middle of a rumor so massive that even the league's own front offices can't hide the anxiety anymore. Everyone smells the change in the air. Everyone feels that something enormous is coming. And whether you support the WNBA, the players, or the rumored new project overseas, one thing is undeniable. Women's basketball will never be the same after this. And that's why staying informed matters. That's why following stories like this matters. Because when the next headline drops, when the truth comes out, you're going to want to know exactly how we got here, who's involved, and what this means for the future of the sport. So if you want to stay ahead of the curve, if you want deeper breakdowns of stories no one else is covering, if you want more high-retention videos that dig into the side of sports most channels are too afraid to touch, make sure you subscribe. Seriously, if you're watching this and haven't hit that button yet, take 2 seconds and do it now. Helps more than you think. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and smash that like button so this video gets pushed to more people. And drop a comment telling us what you think is going to happen. Would you take the billion? Do you think the WNBA can survive something like this? How would you react if Clark or Cunningham left? Your comment isn't just a comment. It boosts the video, fuels the discussion, and helps grow the channel so we can keep bringing you bold, high-energy breakdowns like this. Thanks for watching. The story isn't over. In fact, it might be just beginning.